Hi, and welcome to this edition of the Insurance Experts. It's my pleasure to have Ted Royston on the line. Ted's a long-term care expert. He's both a practitioner, but he's also a master agent trainer for many years. So it's really my pleasure to have him on the line today. Thanks for joining us.
You're quite welcome, Mark.
So Ted, I got to ask you this. How long have you been into the business? I know you've trained so many agents and worked with so many clients.
I started back in 2003. Matter of fact, I just had my 17-year anniversary yesterday.
Awesome. And how many clients would you say you've worked with over 17 years?
Probably over 2,000 families that I've worked with. I used to run 10 or 12 appointments a week, and you just start adding them up. It gets to be a pretty large number.
That's awesome. And it's really noble too, helping all those families out there. What did you do before you were in the long-term care business?
I started in the restaurant business when I was 16 years old, and I spent over 45 years operating restaurants. At the end, I was vice president of operations of a national chain. I was in charge of over 300 restaurants in 4 states. So
Wow.
I was their point man. They say, Ted, go open up Las Vegas. So I moved to Las Vegas and opened it up.
Cool. And I'm sure there's some parallels to the restaurant business. What would you say is the biggest parallel between long-term care and the restaurant business?
Well, I think the way I put it, if you're in the restaurant business, you have to be a people person. You have to have personality. You have to have skills. You have to be able to train people. And in sitting down with folks and doing a long-term care planning session, it's all about lowering the defenses and being personable and earning their trust.
Awesome. Well, today we wanted to talk a little bit about your process. You have a very well-refined and honed process that I know agents find really useful to learn how to do this business. And that's probably one of the top questions I get is, what questions should I ask my clients to help them with the long-term care planning discussion? Can you kind of take us through a high level? What are the first steps that you typically take with clients to help identify what their needs look like?
Well, I've refined a fact finder over the years, and one of the things that I do is I treat people the way I want to be treated. So when I first sit down with them, I go through an agenda. I tell them what we're going to be talking about. I get their permission to ask them questions about their health, their finances, their family history, and things like that. So my fact finder goes through with the presentation that I give so that it's in sync with it.
And you mentioned that
one of the biggest problems with agents is they get sidetracked. So if you're using your fact finder, it's kind of like a roadmap, and you start out from point A to get to point B. The final destination is getting the application out and getting their information and writing it all down.
Right. And I think that's important to have that structure. You'd mentioned to me that you have like a presentation binder, which basically goes through your fact finders that you can take with the client. What does that look like exactly?
Well, what I did is I do a lot of remote selling. So I have a PowerPoint presentation. So when I screen share with the people in, Delaware or Phoenix, whatever, and I printed some of those pages out and put them in a binder. And that way my fact finder is in sync with the binder. And as I go through the different, I think there's about 15 pages, but it really takes them through the process. And I'm a very visual person. And I think when you turn the page and people see something, it cements itself in their memory bank.
Right. And so after you go through the health process, I know you also have a financial fact finder. And one of the top questions we always get in long-term care is, well, how much does it cost? And oftentimes clients want to have an answer to that question before you go through the full education process and the needs analysis. So how do you balance out the two of trying to get a client, to a comfortable price point that they want to have this conversation with you, but still be true to what their needs look like?
Well, as I take them through the fact finder and the presentation, we go through the 4 different options that they have in dealing with a long-term care crisis. The first one is, the family. Are they going to have their family take care of them, and how that looks like? And then, if it's not family, then they're going to self-insure, and we go through that, and that's where I gather the information about their finances, because if they're going to self-insure, well, how much money do they have, and where is that money? Is it liquid, et cetera? They're going to have to sell property. And then I take them through the government. And then once I get to insurance, that's where we get into the process of, okay, well, let's talk about insurance and what the factors are of how you qualify for the insurance. And then when we get to the pricing, I developed an Excel spreadsheet where I put together like the minimum coverage that they can have, and then the medium coverage, and then maximum coverage. And I've laid this out in 10-year periods, like a 30-year-old individual and couple, a 40-year-old, et cetera, all the way up to 70. And so that way they can look at that, and I tell them they know their budget better than I do. So I'm not here to, take money out of their grocery budget, but where do they see themselves fit? Do they want a medium-sized plan, or, I sat down with one couple and their net worth was over $8 million. So, obviously he said, well, my wife, if I'm going to give her a long-term care insurance policy, I don't want an average nursing home. I want a high-end one. So instead of taking a $6,000 a month benefit, he went for a $7,500 a month benefit. When here in San Antonio, the average price of a nursing home is $5,000 to $6,000.
I love that approach. I know every time that we talk to a new company that enters the market, the very first question I ask them is, what's the lowest price point we can get into the coverage at? That way you can start to look at a range and you have a realistic expectation for the client that even if you're going to partially insure, having some plan is often better than having no plan, and having that supplement to the self-funding plan, for example, can be really helpful. What's your philosophy around that aspect of it? Do you feel like people should be buying more of the cost of care, or are you comfortable with this kind of co-insurance approach if they just choose that instead?
Every situation is different, Mark, and that's where I believe that asking the right questions is going to lead you to the right answer, to the right plan. So
Right.
finding out what they want their plan to do is most important. I'm not there to tell them which plan is best for them. I want them to tell me what plan. So it's more or less them designing their own plan.
Right.
And I have a iPad, and I can pull up a quoting tool, and sometimes I just turn it around and say, here, design your own plan. Pick the amount of your monthly benefit, the benefit period, what your deductible is, how much of a inflation protection. I want them to have ownership. That way,
Yeah.
it's not me selling them; they're selling themselves.
Right. And it's so transparent that way. It really helps build trust. And we're going to also provide a lot of these resources on Buddy INS with the fact finders and being able to kind of build your own plan. Of course, having a specialist there to guide you and ask the right questions is so critical as well. But at the end of the day, the client can really see that you're doing what's best for them. So really,
Exactly.
really appreciate your consultative approach and for being on the show today and helping others out there learn how you do what you do so well. So thanks for joining us. And I hope to have you on future episodes as well, Ted.
Great, Mark. Glad to be here, and I'm always willing to share. So if you find any of the tools that I've developed over the years could be beneficial to new agents out there, or even people that are struggling that have been in the business a while, I'm more than happy to share.
Appreciate it, Ted. Talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, Mark.